Welcome to It's a Controls Problem, where we do precision guesswork based upon unreliable data given to us by those of questionable knowledge. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. All right, so welcome everyone to another episode of It's a Controls Problem. I am your host, Charles Johnson. We have Matthew Vanberg here, who'll be joining us here a little bit in a little while. However, I do have a very special guest here. I'm really excited for this episode because this is definitely a subject that is near and dear to my heart. And I'm here with a good friend of mine. His name is Scott Sammarco, and he is the technical trainer of Rizzo Controls. So, Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Charles. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to talk about all these cool things, and training is certainly near and dear to me too, and really it's part of the family at this point.
Let's go ahead and get into your history. So, what brought you into controls, and then what brought you into training?
Oh man, that's a loaded question there, Charles. A little more than a decade ago, I was doing custom communications and control solutions on the New York State Thruway lane mobile radio system, where ironically enough, I started to design and deploy my own version of Modbus. I didn't know Modbus existed, and when I showed my boss, he laughed at me. And I told him, I've been working on this for 6 months, and now you tell me there's already a solution. But at that point, I was already so far in the rabbit hole. I was in love with what we were doing, producing solutions for things that I didn't feel already existed. But little did I know there is an entire industry that exists, the control system, and not just the controls of buildings, but controls of everything, whether it's a PLC, a robotic arm. Obviously, automated systems enhance and encourage us to go further in technology. And so I started there. From there, I got headhunted by a headhunter, and I got recruited to be contractor for the Army Corps of Engineers out of West Point. That was in 2017. And during my tenure at West Point, I had some really awesome and fun challenges where I went even further in the rabbit hole. Fortunately, at that time, I was in college doing Calculus 1, Calculus 2, and all that funness in my chemistry major. And I actually got to have an opportunity to deploy actual calculus before deploying a PID loop. And so it really was this rounded experience that gave me a lot of knowledge and really made me realize how much I didn't know. I had to learn about the refrigeration cycle. I had studied refrigerants and the Van Hoff factor and all these amazing things in chemistry, but didn't have the real life application. So all the way through 2017, I found myself and my coworkers training and teaching each other with our own backgrounds. So from there, I really felt like that would be a lot of fun. I'd like to do that more. Eventually, I started looking out to what other contracts were available where I could do more training. And I found that distributors like Cochrane Supply, Building Control Solutions, Engineered Control Systems, all of these distributors have all these contractors that also need to be trained. And at that point, I had brought West Point from R2 Niagara to AX, and then we were doing an N4 conversion. So I really had this long exposure and this unique experience working for the Army Corps of Engineers that I don't think was popular, common, and I could bring that experience to other contractors in the industry. At that point, I started training for Cochrane Supply. I got to meet people literally all over the world, from New Zealand, Australia, California, Montana, Wyoming, Michigan, and I'm from New York. Like, I had never been west of the Mississippi until I started doing all this training. And in 2022, very late in 2022, we opened up Rizzo Controls. And we just keep doing this. The wife has a long tenure in instructional design, and she is still the Army National Guard liaison at Fort Benning, helping those soldiers get through training. So we get a really unique approach to not only our instructional design, but how do we apply our DoD experience and our government experience to those contractors here in the field. And I think that we do a really great job at that.
Well, good. So now that now that you are a trainer, what what is your like? Do you have a motto or a mantra that you go by when when you apply training to whatever it is? So I know that you do, Niagara Four certification. I know that you also work with Distech, you also work with KMC, and you also work with Honeywell. So how do you apply a lot of that knowledge to really all of those products?
So I think we have to take a step back and ask, why does this particular device exist? What service is it supposed to provide? And when we understand why something exists, we can get there easier with whatever resources we have. So, for example, if we say, hey, I need the air in the space to be conditioned at 70 degrees at all times. Well, we could say, hey, the controller's there to control the HVAC. Well, I mean, that's not untrue, but more specifically, that controller's there to maintain that space in those conditions specified. What does it need to do that? Make sure it's got everything to do that. And when we start asking why something exists and where we are, we can start creating a path on how to get there reliably, repeatably, and portably. But if we just start throwing parts at stuff like, oh, hey, it works, most of the time, it's not really that helpful. So, what we do is, regardless of the brand, we recognize that unitary controllers are there to control a unit, a particular component of a larger system. And we can have those things communicate between one another. But the reality is, we need to find out where we are, what we're trying to do, and we can create a path on how to get there with the minimum points of failure possible.
Yeah, that checks out. Um, you
Thanks,
know,
Charles.
no, it really is interesting when when we're getting into the field. So like one thing that you and I bond over is obviously our training. And so, we are both both N4 certified for training. You've done a few intermediate classes. I'm going to start to be doing intermediate classes here soon. So when you get material from a company that wants you to do training, what is the first thing that you do with that material?
So let me ask you this, when because I want to clarify your question, right? So if there's a
Sure.
customer that approaches us that wants training that's not already a canned solution like our Niagara level 1 or level 2 intermediate or any other class we might have, right? You're asking for a specific, more custom approach to a
How about
particular customer's problem.
How about both?
Oh,
How about
okay.
let's talk about both from a customer perspective and from just say like, hey, you're going to be doing the N4 TCP. Here are the materials. Go.
Okay, so I'll start with the custom one because I think that's a little bit more interesting. And
Okay.
that's primarily because most people know the process of signing up for an N4 cert class, right? If you're listening to the podcast, chances are you're already N4 certified or already interested. So there was a particular customer, and I want to be careful not to spill too many beans, if you will, but a close contact of ours asked us for a class at the Medical University at South Carolina in Charleston. And they said, hey, we need training for Niagara. We need training for Distech. We want training for building automation systems. Here's all the details and the as-built for this part of the building that we need to train them on. So what I had to do in a way just yesterday is have a meeting with them. Like, what are your goals out of this training? Because I could assume that you want to learn 90% Distech or 90% Niagara. And who's to say that I'm right or wrong? I have no idea. So actually, after talking to the customer just for 20 minutes, I got to learn that they have FX on site, they have KMC on site, they have a Distech on site, and they're all obviously competing for the business of MUSC. So this particular training is about Distech and Niagara because there's not a big Niagara presence. So that means I need to do Niagara operations. I need to take courses and labs from Niagara operations to teach them how to navigate the software. Forget about commissioning a JACE. It just doesn't matter if they can't figure out how to log in through a web browser and add a simple history extension to a fan. Let's start there. So For that particular class, we're going to combine some of our disc tech experience, some labs there, Niagara operations, some labs there, and we'll get about a week's worth of training out of it. So that's the more interesting one, and where I think there's a lot more fun. And whether we create course content or not, I have to just know information off the fly. And naturally, we're both technical trainers. We could both talk forever. And some weeks we literally feel like we're talking forever. So that's going to be fun and challenging because there's no script necessarily. I'm going to not fly by the seat of my pants, but I'll have a script for a day. And then I'm sure after lunchtime, someone's going to ask a question and derail the lecture. But that's kind of a fun interaction. And it's almost like playing volleyball where you get to knock the conversation back and forth. And I think that's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So that's the first more fun answer, I think. The second one is if someone projects interest in a Niagara 4 certification class, and we'll just use that one because it's most common. Sometimes they ask what's on it. What I typically do is I have a sample of unlisted YouTube videos that are kind of condensed so they can see what they're going to expect. There's recorded labs and recorded lectures and then recorded demos, and they're all in one video. So sometimes you might find a lab that's 20 minutes long, but that's a lecture, a demonstration, and then I just pause so you're not watching or hearing students work in silence. That's kind of boring. So I usually send those kind of videos like, this is what you can expect. This is what that looks like. And they get to see that I'm not PowerPointing them to death. And I tell them, you guys can read. You can read PowerPoints. I'm going to show you and talk about this and why it's important to know, and not just because it's on the exam.
Yeah, I think we have, the way that I approach things are two ways. By the way, I'm pretty sure I know what customer you're talking about.
You probably do.
Pretty sure I've got I've got that. I didn't realize they had that many, but I guess campuses be campusy.
There's a lot of campuses for MUSC.
Yep. So when I look at an approach, so like let's say from a customer perspective, first thing that I want is like, so Tritium has like an operator's training. I don't use it, and it's not that it's bad or anything like that. I personally feel that that we have too many variables from a customer perspective to, I think, effectively have an operator's training just straight from Tritium. Because, as you know, you could have a single Jace job and never a supervisor ever, right? There are customers that just do
absolutely.
like a single building, single Jace. You're going through the web browser to do graphics. Okay, you don't have a single workbench site. Then you have some that all they do are Niagara devices and supervisors. And so there is a workbench and there is a web browser. So what I'll do first is I'll ask the customer for remote access to their system. I require it because I need to be able to spend, at least 8 hours, if not maybe 2 days, to look at their system as a whole. After that, I can then create a tailored operators training for their facility specifically. And then even if they have some additional products, we can throw that in there too. Obviously that's kind of a slippery slope, but I have people that ask questions about GFX. I give them GFX advice. I have questions about, programming Honeywell spiders or optimizer controllers. So obviously I have a lot of different licenses, even though I work for LinkSpring specifically. And then obviously I have our edge training where we kind of, take the controller and kind of show you like, hey, a lot of the stuff that you did in like the N4 TCP is the same thing here because it's a Niagara controller, right? One thing that I try to teach people about Niagara specifically, and I don't know, you may agree with this, and I would definitely love your input, but think of it from the most simplistic way that Niagara is about, you always will have a driver. Underneath that driver, you're always going to have drivers, and underneath that, you're going to have whatever network it is. Under that network, you're going to have a device, and underneath that device, you're going to have points, right? So regardless of whether you're programming locally in a regular controller like an ECB, ECY, or anything from KMC or whatever, or whether or not you're using like the NRIO network or NDIO network, or even our Onyx network if you're connecting to our controller specifically, right? So you have that device, which could be IO, but they're still considered a device. And then there are points that you discover underneath. Whether you program directly in Niagara or whether you program directly in the controller, that's kind of how it functions, at least to me at the like at the primitive level. And I try to get people to understand that as quickly as possible. Then from like the like N4 TCP side or whatever, that's a little more interesting because we all bring our own individuality when it comes to training. Yes, they provide a script, but how many of us actually use that script, right? And it's not the fact that it's bad. We just have a method of teaching. But yeah, I like to do lectures and demos, and then I have them go through the lab. That way, they're paying attention to me and not trying to focus on the lab at the same time, right? Because I'm sure that you work sometimes at a lightning fast pace, and sometimes when we get really excited, sometimes it's hard for us to slow down, right? Like we're so excited about something, so all of a
For
sudden
sure. Yeah,
we just
absolutely.
we just go into over here. Then all of a sudden, like, wait, what are you doing? I'm like, well, look, just here's the demo. I have a video for you to look, and I do. I also have I actually use Vimeo for them. Like so like my manuals have videos that you can click on the demo portion of the lab, and it actually brings up the video of the lab and go through there. So even if students kind
So
of get
ours does the YouTube unlisted YouTube
okay,
video the same. So it's if even if you missed like, oh my god, I had to run pick my kid up from the doctor, like no problem. Like everything's recorded. If you miss a lab or two, not the end of the world.
yep, absolutely. So here's another question that I have. When it comes to students, obviously after working with a few, we get a feel for how they learn or how they're going to progress like throughout a week. So, how do you help some of those students that might need that little extra push, in the right direction? How do you handle that?
This is a great question, Charles. I want to say that thank you. This is a wonderful question, and it's something that I think takes a lot of finesse. Usually, we know by the end of Monday, and sometimes my judgment's a little bit off. So, really, by Tuesday at the first break, around 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, we know who's going to struggle, right?
Mhm.
What I do is while they're working, I'll stop sharing my screen and I might peek in to see if they're really struggling. And what I get to do is if I see them like, oh, they don't know how to pin slots on the T stat, I'll be like, hey guys, remember if you're trying to pin the slot, like try to nudge them because if he has a question or one of the students, chances are somebody else is at that same point. Additionally, I always invite people to work late, especially in a virtual class. I tell them I'm available after class. Now, I might have to get off to have dinner with the family. That's just something that I'm gonna have to do. However, if you're like, hey, it's 7 o'clock, I wonder if Scott's available, call me. I do not work 9 to 5. It's when do you need me? Do you have a question? Do you want to clarify something? And so what I find is a mixture of kind of every so often throwing that nugget out. And I try not to do it too frequently, only once or twice a day. And then emailing that student directly with information going back and forth. Although it keeps me engaged as a trainer while everybody's working, I've found that mechanisms to know when they're done is also helpful. So you're not standing there like everyone's so pretty and putting their cameras on. But how we handle these students that are falling behind is just with a little bit of attention without making them feel bad. That's the goal, right? Give you attention, get you over the obstacle without making you feel diminished in any type of way, because that's never the goal.
That's right. Like, and that's really important too, right? We don't know what they don't know, but also they don't know what they don't know.
And
So
sometimes they're not so great on their background, or kind of fluff it up a little bit. And I'm like, I don't don't think that was necessarily true.
Well, what I find, I don't know if you find this a lot. What I find is, I find that I'm getting a lot of people that are coming in with years, and I mean years of controls experience under their belt. And I mean years of it. And it
Yeah,
kind of
20 years plus, yeah.
and it scares me. And I'll tell you why it scares me. It scares me because even though I probably have as much experience as they do, I then kind of get I kind of have this notion that people who have been in the industry for significantly longer than I have currently, that I know that are that have years on me, especially because they're significantly older. I know that when they're coming in, I get a little timid. Not like I'm not intimidated, but I'm like, oh, I'm wondering how well they're going to be accustomed, kind of like this faster paced training. How well from let's say a computer standpoint, how computer literate they are, right? So
It's a big obstacle. It really, truly is.
it is, and having a student's environment set up for success is really onto the student too, right? So no matter where you have your setup, whether it's in person, or you do everything remotely, right? Like having a laptop. Well, not only should you have your laptop, have an extra monitor, and if you're home, see if you can have two extra monitors, right? So you can have one screen up with your workbench, one screen up with your, with the training manual, and maybe the other screen up for the training that you see, right? Because otherwise, I'll see people work on like an itty bitty screen, and I'm like,
With a mouse pad or trackpad. And we put that
yes,
in our pre-course communications, by the way. Like, hey, we highly recommend 2 monitors.
yeah, and a mouse. Don't
Yes.
because so many people are used to being out in the field and not having a mouse, and they're just using a mouse. So I'm like, oh, for the love of God, all things holy, please don't do that.
No, it's way harder.
It is like how when you're dealing with students, I always try to make it a safe space for them. And I am very lighthearted, and I try to get people into into this thing where we can talk to one another. If someone wants to rib me, I'll rib them a little bit, just to them understand. Look, while this is a serious training, we're here to also have fun and learn at the same time. Because let's face it, tests test anxiety is a real thing. People get embarrassed on how many questions they're asking. So I'll get people, I'm like, hey, any questions? Cricket, cricket, cricket. Well, you should. In my head, I'm like, you
Right,
should
yeah,
have lots of questions right now,
I
especially
actually
hearing
play the cricket noise. I have voice mod. I play the it's really great. I think that makes the class really entertaining and engaging too, by the way. I'll share that link with you. I think it's great.
Oh, yeah, I definitely want it. And I really do appreciate when you were like, hey, how you try to nudge them in the right direction and you don't make them feel isolated. Right. Sometimes that's a problem, where I usually use in my remote environment like a raised hand or a thumbs up, like, hey, give me a thumbs up when you're done the lab, and that way we can move forward. And then I'll see a few stragglers, and what I'll do is I'll private message them and see where they are. I'll log into their station, and then I'll usually send them a private message. And then if they're not answering, hey, hey, is everything okay? Are you, how's it going, kind of thing. I try to give everyone as much, much attention as possible. But obviously, there are sometimes there are people that learn in a different way. And when I understand that at that point, maybe this class is not for them, we do offer that self-paced option for them, and they have a year to take the class or to go through all the training, and then I'll follow up with them throughout the year. And then when they're ready to take the test, I'll sit down with them and hey, do you have these principles here? Can you show a few things? Or I'll ask some questions and see if they're like, yeah, okay, I think you're ready to take the test. Or hey, maybe you want to hit these here very quickly, and then we'll circle back around. I think that's kind of the best way.
It's a great approach to have, and it reminds me of how when students are done with their exam and we're done grading them, and now typically we grade them over the weekend because
Mhm.
it's tedious and getting interrupted, as you know, when you're grading is the most frustrating thing in the world.
Yep.
So when we give them feedback, I tell them where they might have lost some points. And every Monday morning, the phone is blowing up with, "Can you show me where I lost those points?" Or maybe the screenshot that I put in the email wasn't enough. Like, how did I miss that? Because you only exported that one trend at midnight,
Yeah.
not all of them.
Yeah. And then when we say all, we mean all, like
Right,
every
right, all
single
of
one.
them. Yes.
Yeah, give me like when I say, oh, you only gave me three. Well, no, I only had those three. No, there are three when you start the station that are just there.
Right.
I want those two. All right, here's a good one. Um, what do you think makes what makes you stand out from other trainers? Like obviously, like we all have a level of knowledge. We all have to teach, a specific set of things, like especially like in Niagara. But like, what do you think makes you stand out, other than trainers? I'm not saying what makes you better, but like, what makes you
Mhm.
unique in the pool of trainers that we have?
So my wife would call this verbal judo. And we kind of have an ongoing joke because obviously you and I could talk forever about whatever it is. As long as we're passionate about it, we'll just keep talking.
Yep.
So, what we call mental judo or verbal judo is the ability to take something complex and diminish it and minimize it so much that it's a simple sentence. Now, that often leads to a lack of precision or maybe room for interpretation. But if we can understand even an inaccurate concept, but it's near the target, refining that is much easier. And we use things like associative learning. What do these students already know, and what can I relate this course material to their experience already?
Mhm.
So I think that's really what makes us different is we use things like the ADDIE process. We use instructional design implementation, and then we constantly review our course material such that we take an after action report. We take the feedback from students, what went well, what went and didn't, and we make the class better for the next class.
Hey
So
Matthew,
what's
did you?
cool about that, by the way, and I want to share some with you on a private channel. That's these after action reports I've been recording for years, and you can actually quantify how the grades have gone up from when I started getting like an 88 average and watching them go up to 96, 96 and a half at this point. And it's really because of these feedback loops that we've created. And I think that's one thing that makes us unique.
Good. I think everyone provides their own, like for example, right? Like we have Vern, right? Vern with MOV training. He has been doing it
Legendary.
absolutely, and just generally a great guy. He and I talk on a weekly basis, at least once a week, if not more. Um, he's been around for he's been around forever, and he bring what Vern brings to the table is that not only does he bring his unique experience, of doing this for so long, he did a lot beforehand. He's got quite a history, and I'm not going to go into all of his history, but he and I went to dinner when I was in Minnesota in July. I think it was July. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was just after Treason Day, as I like to call it. Not, I don't call it Independence Day. I call it Treason Day. Yeah, I always joke with my British fans, like not fans, friends. Hey, happy Treason Day, everyone. And actually, when we go over the calendar in N4, I actually call it Treason Day.
I'm gonna
Uh,
add that to my. I'm
oh
gonna
yeah,
make a note because that is great.
oh yeah, no,
That's awesome.
you have to. What I think that I bring to the table, not only just the experience that I have overall with a variety of different control systems, because I'm certified in over 15 different controls products, so I can take like a bunch of train or ALC people, like, hey, you remember the geo tree that you guys were doing? Yeah, well, the hierarchy with this is just like the geo tree, or like, hey,
Mhm.
like, hey, your TGP2, you're doing, you have this block here. Well, think of this and kick control that way. I bring that, but also because I'm a certified developer, and obviously, pretty much all of 2025 was about nothing but development for LinkedIn. So like I also bring that level there now and understanding why things were created the way they were created in Niagara and the reasoning for it. So like I could say, hey, they're like, well, hey, why do I have this here? I'm like, well, if you think of it from a design standpoint, this is why it had to be done this way because X, Y, Z. So
Right.
I
It's
can
almost obscure until you do some research, right?
Yes. So that level there, I think, also happens, and oddly enough, because of my development experience, I get a lot of developers that actually are like wannabe developers that come in and get that experience too. So like I really like that. I also provide them a Google Drive. So this Google Drive contains a palette of like the last 20 years of Niagara programming, both on AX and N4 side. I provide demo stations of hierarchies that contains like 30 different hierarchies that you can do. I contain a graphics demo for them as well, so they can see how certain things can be laid out. So like I give them a lot of information up front. I give them a copy of the gray book. I give them a copy now of BAS inputs and outputs from Francisco.
Yeah, I was going to
Um,
say, I was about to suggest if that was the book you were applying to that as well. Very
yep,
good.
I do. I do have that, and then I've got a bunch of different other presentations that are that talk about like series transform and stuff like that. So stuff that like you would see in like the intermediate or advanced class before they were created, and before things that Linkspring went on board with. I provide that level because to me, I'm putting my name with you, so I'm responsible for you, right? Like I'm putting you out in the field because I'm putting you out there as a Niagara certified technician. And as you know, some companies expect performance from someone as soon as they take training, right? Oh, you're the expert now. Now go out and do this. Well, I was just given the keys to drive. This is my first week driving as a licensed driver on my own. Like, what do you want me to do? So, like, I tried to give them a lot here. Now, one thing that I really want to highlight about your class specifically, you do this, I believe you do it today, um, is a Jeopardy.
Yeah, we do Jeopardy, Charles.
So,
We do. Yeah.
so
Did I
can
ever
you
send that to
explain
you,
that?
by the way?
You have not, but can
Oh,
you?
I'm a jerk. Hold on. I'm going to write that down. Send Charles Jeopardy.
Yeah,
Okay, no problem.
I would love
So,
to see it. But yeah, go ahead and talk about it.
so I just call it Facilities Feud because it's hilarious. And so what we do is I cut the class in half. And so two things actually. The first thing is the ideal amount of students we have found is between 8 and 9. That seems to be a advanced enough pace where we don't leave people behind because there's not so many of them, while there's still enough people to keep the class interesting. And so what the Jeopardy allows us to do when we have at least 8 people is split into two teams. I'm like Alex Trebek, right? And the host, if you will. And in these two teams, I put these teams out into breakout rooms. So what ends up happening is I present the board, and whoever picked first for their team members does not get to pick the first category and value question. So after the question's presented, I give them about a minute for them to take screenshots. I drop a screenshot in chat so everybody's got it. And then I put them in the breakout rooms, and they have 3 minutes. At the end of the 3 minutes, or just shy thereof, I go into each breakout room, say, guys, you got 20 seconds. I'm going to close the room. So then when I close the rooms, they come back and they have to answer the question, the team that got to pick it. Now, if they get it right, they get the points. If they get it wrong, I have to play a funny noise in voice mod to keep the mood light, womp, 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 or some other kind of soundboard to make it funny and light. And so if it's wrong, the other team has a opportunity to steal those points. So we kind of go back and forth, and all of the Jeopardy questions, or I shouldn't say all, about 70% of them are topics that you can expect on the Tritium final exam for level 1 or level 2, because I made a Jeopardy for both classes.
Okay.
Now, I've tuned the questions over time because the first time I did it, they weren't really clear, and I found myself explaining half the questions. But at this point, the level one is so well tuned that I even have students demonstrate how to enable and disable, say, a history extension based on a schedule or whatever, right? And I think that's a terrible example. I think we've talked about that. But I have
Mm-hmm.
something to that effect, like we want you to use the composite editor. Maybe have whatever the question might be. And I've changed them and I try to rotate them. There's a daily double in there where they get to bet all their points and it's hilarious. We really have a good time. The point of it is not just review, but it's to engage students in a different way. Nobody wants to be lectured to all day, every day. Unfortunately, it's the reality of sitting in either an in-person or a virtual class. But it doesn't mean we can't get their attention in different ways. And so even if you were getting kind of bored, like, yeah, I know I've been doing this for 20 years, I'm really comfortable in Niagara, you're going to be engaged in Jeopardy. And I actually get to rely on those students that do know something because they get to teach the people in their group what they know and how they solve problems. And the other 30% of the content of Jeopardy that's not on the exam is real life useful information. Like a series Transform is a perfect example. The event service in Niagara. Like there's a question where I say, in the intermediate anyway, show me how to set up an event service so that I get an email and I already have the password provided for them. So I get an email anytime a user in the user service gets edited. Like that's a real thing we've had to deploy. And then we talk about, well, you don't want to monitor every slot because then you're going to get 30,000 emails because someone
Yep.
changed their view profile in a web browser. So
Yeah.
then we have to really talk about these minutia and these minute details that really elevate the quality of integrators that we put out. All this to say, Jeopardy's here to engage people in a different way.
Yeah. You know, what's also interesting is how do you make a determination on what is truly beneficial for someone to know versus what is okay for them to, maybe we can table that for a later time, but something else is more pressing.
That's a tough question. So, and I'm going to answer it with a tough answer because the reality is I think every customer is different and they have different goals. So we'll tailor that and we'll tabletop that depending on the customer. Like we have some really loyal customers that will send us 30, 40 students a year. And if we know that they're repping Distech, then great. Let's teach you how to license the wizard service with a non-Distech branded Jace and then use the BCP backnet network, right? So we'll add labs, things like that to make a more well-rounded training and make it more applicable to a customer. Trying to decide if one lab is more valuable than the other comes down to impact and if it's going to have an impact on the student. But that's hard to know when a class is open to the public
Right.
because how do you know what one company is going to value over another unless they're both in the same geographic region and in the same rep for the
Yep.
OEM? So that's a really hard answer.
Yeah. Like even at times, I almost want to be like, let's say level one focuses solely on the Jace. Level two focuses on some Jace, but a lot of supervisor. And then like level three brings them all together by even adding more complex things, like let's say system DB. You talked about the event service, right? Like how do you discuss depth in the advanced service, right? Like what makes someone choose like a specific depth that they need to look for, that kind of thing. I think that like it really is interesting in the fact that like depending on where you go, and I know the customer that you're also talking about too, about being able to do more distech stuff because I know that you teach. Actually, you get all their students. Um,
I don't know
uh,
about all, but we get a good amount.
they haven't come my way, so
Yeah, they don't rip Rig Spring either, though.
well, also true. But yeah, no, they haven't come my way. But all right, let me rephrase it with a different question. Um,
I
Okay.
love your questions, Charles. These are wonderful questions.
These are, hey, we're doing it live. This is Bill O'Reilly. We're doing it live. We're winging it here. Okay. So we've gone over valuable versus maybe, appealing to the masses. How do you know, when do you usually get the feeling in a class that your training session, your training week is going to go well versus I am dreading the rest of this week? And this is just, us trainers talking.
Right. So I think two things will generally happen. If they're not engaged and coming back with questions or interrupting the lab, if they're not interacting, there's a problem and they have to change something. Because one of two things is going to be true. Either they're all bored out of their minds, which is not very likely, or nobody gets anything, and I think they do. And no matter what, that's a really, really bad position to be in. So what I'll do, and this is especially funny like in person, I'll literally tell the students to stand up, turn around and do the hokey pokey.
Yeah.
And like it's funny because then they start smirking, they're throwing jabs and laughs at each other. And then I get to ask a question again, and then the odds of them answering are so much higher. The minute we throw something in there that's not expected, we've pulled their attention, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a boring lab about adding a history extension and they've been doing this for 20 years, then great. If you get it, then let me step this up and explain why history imports are better than exports, because that might not be a little bit of a difference that you've recognized in your 20 years. And if you have, kudos. When we're talking about Niagara integration and bringing our JSUP to a supervisor, let's talk about provisioning. There's going to be something that we can discuss that you're not super confident in. Just like if I sat in one of your classes, there's going to be something that you're more confident or more capable in than I am. And odds are there's something I've done more than a few times than you. And like that's just part of the industry. We have different experiences and different strengths.
Hey, watch
So
it, bro. I'm the host. I'm kidding.
you are the well, you're a phenomenal trainer
kidding.
too.
I'm kidding. I'm absolutely kidding. You're right though that there are things that we all bring that we may be stronger in than others. That's absolutely right, and I think that's a good one.
What was your
Okay.
question? I'm sorry, I forgot your question. I feel like I didn't answer it.
No, I think you answered it. I think you answered it just fine. Here's another one. Um, how do you as we know that we see people all the time, even in the Reddits and the subreddits.
Oh goodness.
Where you like you now obviously you've outed yourself more on there, but everyone knows who I am now. They see they see Icy ad and boom, they're like, hey, I think one of them was like, if you say link spring 3 times, a Charles will appear. And literally I was just looking at the Reddit, I'm like, and here I am.
I thought that was great. I was cracking up.
Yeah. So, but however, it is more apparent than not from a lot of different forums, and even including on LinkedIn, that some companies value training less than. Now, obviously, nothing beats on the job training, right? But I think that some companies and people value in person, a weekly session. They value that less than the experience they get in the job. And what I find that yes, you do need, that there is a combination of both. But how do you convince them that your class, your training sessions are valuable to them? How do we, as a community, increase, the number of people to say, hey, look, training is valuable because you're having these people struggle now. Like, what do you think is the goal to get people to do more training? This isn't to put money in our pockets. It's to make sure that everyone, gets the same level of opportunity of education.
Oh, you hit a big point and a pillar of ours. A pillar of Rizzo Controls is to lower the barriers of entry into the industry. So, agreed. How do we get in the industry? First, you have to know it exists, right? Otherwise, you'd never bother to join it. And we see that a lot on Reddit. People get to see that it exists, and then they're interested. So how do we get more people in training? It's a good question. It's a hard question. I have focused on doing that primarily through word of mouth. If I do so well, somebody's going to say something and they're going to want to send more people. That's how I think we do it. And I think you do it inadvertently, whether it's purposeful or not. If you do such a good job that someone was excited and appreciative to be there, they're going to go back to their boss, back to their coworkers and say, oh, I learned this here in class. Oh, hey, I learned this from Charles. I learned this from Scott. I learned this from it's a controls problem podcast. I learned it from them. Well, that's going to instantly, at least to a manager, have value, right? And the more value we get to put in their face that this has value, this has impact, this has meaning, the more likely it is that they're going to send more students. Now, getting a technician out of a field where they're making money for the company, where they're productive in their environment, and coming to training, a lot of managers don't see that nearly as productive. And I think you're right. Training is undervalued. Where I think we can expand that value by offering support to our customers before, during, and after training. And I'm not saying work for free. They're a student. Like, we offer a number of hours for free for any one of our students. You have a problem? Just call us, email us. Let's see if we can help you out of a bind that you've been working on for 3.5 hours.
Yep.
There obviously is a limit to what we can provide for free. But the reality is, if we get you out of a bind in 20 minutes that you've been working on for 3, what if we could have trained you that? We could have trained that to you. Like, that's value. And then they're going to go back to their manager and say, oh, hey, I was having this problem, but I called Charles and he helped me through it. Your value as a trainer gets increased, and they're going to see that value across every single number of technicians they may have underneath them. I think we expand that by simply doing what we do, Charles.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's a good way to think about it. In some cases, you could have some people that then, like, oh, well, we can always call them and they'll always help us, right? So sometimes that doesn't help the cause, because then you can become a crutch. I'm not saying you specifically, but in general,
right. But that's why there has to be a limit, like 2 hours, whatever it is. Like, there has
Yep.
to be a hard stop. Like, hey, listen, this is not why we're here.
How about this perspective? And then I've got one more question, and then I know if we say Matthew's name 3 times, he will appear. Here's my perspective. And this is the way I think about it. Okay, imagine how many hours you spent waiting for an answer on HVAC Talk or Reddit or so forth. Because sometimes even when people answer questions, some people aren't they're like, yo, get trained, or yo, look it up. Well, okay, I did try to look it up. Right.
Yeah.
So to me, if I want to talk to a project manager or a boss, right, time is money. How much time did someone just spend, wasting in the field, learning how to do something that they could have learned in 20 minutes in a classroom setting? Right?
It's hard to quantify that, because you have to have the technician record that amount and present that to someone that can make it quantitative over a wider area and period of time.
Well, but think about estimates, though, right? So a job has an estimate, and then they look at the hours that are being applied to that estimate, right? Now, granted, I think that people need to be more accurate when they're doing their timesheet, right? Like, especially if your salary, how often are you putting that you worked 80 hours?
If your salary,
right?
You worked over 40, trust me, but you probably only wrote 40 because there's no impact.
Right. However, I will argue that there is an impact. And the impact would be that if you're still putting in your time at 40 hours, and for your jobs, the issue then comes that salesmen will then never know how they actually truly need to estimate the job, right?
Agreed.
And so at that point, they can then think, oh, well, it still took so and so 20 hours on this job here to do that, and he did it, whereas he may have actually did 40, and then, like, knowing he had to go to another job site because that one was on fire, he had to. Well, I say hey, but they had to, because there are plenty of women in the industry too.
A lot of
That,
good
that
ones too, actually. I'm numbering
absolutely.
class, and I'm like, you guys are way better than any men I've ever I've ever trained. You guys are awesome with the attention to detail.
Agreed. And no, I believe women have a better attention to detail than men.
hmm
Absolutely. And there's actually there are several females I want on here, and there's one that always impressed me. I taught she took an edge class of mine, one of the first edge classes, and she's just always impressed me on how she does things, and she continuously betters herself in that. She's a great person there. But yeah, no, I think like, however, like, you know they may be working over, after hours and not telling anyone, right? So like, you're
hmm
not doing anyone a favor. So my thinking is that, yeah, like, I think that there's a certain number that someone could reasonably take, but a lot of people don't want to take that investment. So I think the value add for the training is like, okay, how, maybe what someone took 4 hours to do, if they learned how to do it the right way, it would take them, you know let's say an hour. So let's say then you're cutting your time by, you know let's say 20% in that, right? So I think, that 20%, it's hard to get someone out of field in 1 week, right?
hmm
As you said. But I think, I think that if we can show them how they're struggling in some cases, I think that might help their case. I don't know. It's always an
I,
interesting topic, I think.
I think that there was a report done by the Army National Guard, where if they obviously use the term soldier, but if they're 20 times their value, right?
Yep.
I'm sure that we could apply those same statistics or that same approach into our industry. But it's a tough problem to solve, Charles. How do we say, as an industry, this is what it's worth? I don't know how Tritium came up with their figures. I really don't.
Yeah.
Back in 2008, 2010, on when the AX certification was still rampant and everyone was looking for training. But I'm sure that there was hopefully there was some type of analysis performed that came up with a figure.
Yeah, and that's tough, right? Because oddly enough, obviously the U.S. is a very expensive country to live in. And like, even if you go over the European side, they're probably paying in European dollars half of what, like half the cost of what we may charge, in trainings.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And so like, even trying to, even like, oh man, I don't know about that. Like, well, it's kind of hard, right? Like, obviously, if there was a hard line, I think of like, what someone needs to do over the course of their job, versus the training that's provided for that. I think that might be the way to go. I don't know. I think it's always I think it's always an interesting one to think about more of how we get people in, because I do feel that there does need to be a bit more training. You have like Smart Buildings Academy that kind of does, a bunch of, getting control techs up to spec, because like, obviously we can't do that, right? Like, we can't spend weeks, on a course of just that, right? Because we're teaching classes and out. We could be doing controls projects. We could be doing a lot of other things. So like, places like that can help at least get like the mechanical knowledge, and then we can then we can supplement that with, intimate product knowledge, whether it's KMC, Straight Niagara,
Right.
Distech, Honeywell. So I think there's that kind of balance where I think if we work together, and that's the thing, I want us trainers to work together, right? Like, I talk to you, I talk to Vern, I talk, with Kevin Amoroso from Distech. We're all friends. To me, trainers, I think, can work together to come up with a common cause, and then work for the greater good of the community, because it's really about the community, right? Like, it's about
It's how
about
we succeed together.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Long and the short, we succeed together. We
Yep.
burn and succeed together.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We live by the tritium, we die by the tritium. So, I get that, for sure. So, well, I'm going to click my heels that you can't really see, but I'm clicking them and saying Matthew, Matthew, Matthew.
But were you wearing ruby slippers?
Okay, I knew I was missing something. Not that I would know what rubies look like,
I have
because I'm
dinosaur slippers.
colorblind.
Do those count?
So,
I literally have dinosaur slippers next to my desk. They were a Christmas present from the wife.
a lot of people were like, hey, Matthew needs to speak more. Well, guess what? You get your wish. Matthew has a bunch of questions for us. I don't know if it's a bunch, but he's got some questions for both of us. So, Matthew, you are now the host of It's a Controls Problem.
Thank you, Charles. All right, let's kick it off right away. All right, this one is the hoops factor. We learn best from our mistakes. What is the most expensive or embarrassing thing you accidentally shut down or broke while you were on the job learning?
Oh, that's a really good question. I am pretty sure this is the most embarrassing thing that I had done. There was a heat recovery chiller in a science building at West Point, and I am almost positive I had a set point for the condenser water and the supply water backwards. And so the chiller never turned on because it was always too cold. Now that ended up being a problem because it was cooling what I have to call critical equipment, and that was a 24/7 365 heat recovery chiller. So it threw off a number of alarms, and I had to go up to the colonel of the building and say, "Oh, that's my fault. I have to eat this one." And it was a little embarrassing, but it wasn't a big deal because I had so many other opportunities to prove that I wasn't worthless and I could do something right.
And what did you learn, Scott?
Attention to detail. And I think that's something everybody can attest to at some time in their career. It's so easy to make a mistake.
All right, Charles, it's your turn. I know you got plenty of mistakes to choose from. Shoot.
Two scenarios. The first one, the first one was slightly smaller. The one was a 12-story office building. The first one was a school, and I was integrating a trained BCU, and I didn't do all the programming ahead of time, and I started doing some live changes there. Well, in a trained BCU, if you write to a backnet point that has been exposed as backnet point from a BCU to you, if you write to it at higher than a priority 10, it actually locks in that value, and you cannot relinquish the default unless you go through Rover and release it. So, in my haste, instead of having the complete program that I thought I could do, I decided, you know what? I can finish the rest of this when I get to the job site. And stupid me, not remembering my own knowledge, I overrode all of the rooftop units on in the system, and so which is at a priority 8, higher than priority 10. Fun fact. So literally for like 2 weeks, this building ran 24/7, and the owner was pissed. They're like, we can't shut the unit down. We haven't been able to do anything. I'm like, what are you talking about? The schedules are right there. All right, well, cool. I'm telling the unit to turn off. And then that's when I realized I did not add a writable point before before the object that I needed to control. And then I was like, well, guys, I'm holding this L to my chest. I overrode all 24 rooftop units on, and now we need to pay train to go back out there because we don't have the Rover software and relinquish them. That was the first one, and really the thing that I preach is, make sure that you have all your ducks in the row, because when you try to rush, you will make a mistake, and it can be costly.
Well, I only asked you for one, so.
Oh, this one is really good. This one's really good.
All right, make it quick.
I sucked the cooling towers dry out of an office building and the retail loop didn't have condenser water.
And what did you learn, Charles?
Make sure that you stick to your guns, and that when you think that a valve is working the wrong way, you let everyone know that it's working the wrong way, and then get them to verify it ahead of time.
All right. All great lessons to learn, like the difference between singular and plural.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And now on to the next. What is the single worst piece of advice you were giving as a rookie that you actually listened to at the time?
That's a little harder for me. I had, and I'm not going to say his name, but if you are familiar with my experience at West Point, you were there with me, you'll know who I'm talking about. This particular leader did not always make the best decisions, and I actively would disagree with him. And I was definitely a participant of, that's a bad idea. And so I had to learn that same lesson, Matthew. It's sometimes you really need to stick to your guns. And I had been wrong. Obviously we all get wrong sometimes, and sometimes you just have to own the mistake and fix it. It's just whatever it is. However, I think I was blessed enough that I had enough people around me that cared enough and that would guide me if they saw me going astray. And I don't know that I ever listened to really poor advice. I think that the reason I was successful as an integrator or as a controls engineer, whatever I was doing at West Point at the time, I was successful because I wasn't afraid to speak up and have a conversation. I didn't know it all, and I wasn't afraid to admit that. I was not afraid to admit that I didn't know everything. And I think that I used to say that in the beginning of our classes, but right, or at least if I didn't understand it, or if I wasn't confident, I'd ask someone that knew more than me to clarify for this, or if I was totally out of line. And relying on professional engineers, whether they were mechanical, civil, chemical, it didn't matter. I was surrounded by brilliant people at West Point. Somebody was going to have a little bit of insight that would cross a bridge for me and really get me someplace where I needed to be. So I don't know that I can speak to that one where I took bad advice from anybody. I think that the collective advice was generally good.
Well, Scott, I'm happy for that in your journey. Charles, you're up. Bad advice.
Never leave your book bag with your laptop in the backseat of your car in DC. It's never okay during any time of the day.
Well, that sounds like good advice. I'm guessing you had...
No, the advice was it's fine. I was gonna, we went to lunch, and I was like, hey, let me go grab my book bag out of the car. Nope, don't worry about it. You're fine. Literally, we went in there to grab 2 hot dogs each. We were no more than 10 minutes in there, and my stuff was gone. And let me tell you, because the person I had to report that to was my dad. And while he may have been sympathetic to other people, he was not sympathetic to me. I got the sawed off that day. It was terrible.
Yeah.
I get it. I worked for my dad for 15 years. Sons are for making examples of in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah, I mean, needless to say, there were some things I definitely deserved where I became the whipping boy. But there were some things I was like, you know what though, I think you need a little more grace there. But it was what it was, nothing but love. So yeah,
hindsight's always 2022, Charles. It's so much easier to see your mistakes looking in the past.
Yep.
Moving on to the next question: true or false? It is easier to teach a mechanical guy how to do controls than it is to teach an IT guy how to understand mechanical systems.
I think it's easier to teach the mechanic controls.
So true.
But I think it also depends on the person. But if I had to generalize this, that's the way I go. What about you, Charles?
Yes, agreed. You know what? If the mechanic guy doesn't understand, give me a laptop and internet connection, and I'll team you in and do it. Teaching an IT person controls is a nightmare. And even mechanical systems, because dealing with IT, I'm going to catch flack for it, but I don't care. Dealing with IT people is a nightmare. I would rather, I hate to say it, I would rather program, on a 186 computer all day, every day, than teaching an IT person mechanical systems. Any day of the week, twice on
agreed.
Sunday.
Agreed. IT is great. It's a great background to have if you're trying to come into the building automation systems or HVAC control space. It's very, very valuable. But it is difficult to get you out of the same mindset that, oh, it's just a computer, oh, it can wait, nothing's that critical. When it's 33 degrees outside and you're telling that compressor to run and it's a DX coil, that's a bad idea. It's probably not supposed to be doing that unless it's a heat pump. Mm-hmm. And understanding those really small differences can mean a difference between a 30,000 compressor or a number of compressors being destroyed and, it's just not working. So, yeah, I definitely would rather pick the mechanic who already understands what's trying to happen. And now we're just creating a different path to get there.
So we have consensus on that. Next question. What is the one soft skill that is effectively impossible to teach? You either have it or you don't.
You want to go first this time, Charles?
Remembering your audience.
That's a really good one. I was going to say patience.
Remembering your audience. Understanding when you can talk technical and when understanding that technical talk is not going to work. I think that is a soft skill that that a lot of people lack, and even what makes some trainers bad trainers.
So I agree, Charles. I think that's actually harder than patience, because patience you can learn independently. That's a soft skill that you develop over time and is even tailored to the individual receiving it, right? It's tailored to the audience, because some building owners are rather technical and they can get a lot. Others are like, I need this in a sentence. And I'm like, ooh, we got here with 3 weeks of work and you want it down to a sentence. But there's 4 problems. There's a gas leak and a burner's out and a pump's dead. Okay, how'd we get here? That might be tough.
But yeah, why use many words when few words do trick?
That's right.
Thank you, Kevin.
Great offense reference.
Mm-hmm. Answer good. Question next. If you could magically delete one outdated topic from the N4 Controls training program and replace it with something modern, what goes out and what comes in?
There's a lot that I think I would change. Primarily having a focus on the labs that have a real objective, a real world impact, instead of this fictitious, arbitrary, well, you could do this, but when would you? It's not impactful or meaningful. One thing that me and Charles have talked about specifically is like using a schedule to enable and disable a history extension. That seems like such a silly idea. I think a much better use case for showing the composite editor is having a single numeric writable, like in the intermediate class, there's VAV tech override, where you can override every VAV on the second floor to be 100% open. That's a better use case for the composite editor. And it's not even a great one, but it's better than enabling and disabling a history extension based on a schedule where the composite editor isn't even required. You could just link mark that. So what did it show? What was the benefit?
Charles, I know you got a take. What is it?
Oh, okay. Just one.
Yeah, just one, Charles. Just one. Sorry, I took the easy one from you.
No. There are several key things that I would get rid of as a whole. But the first one I want to get rid of are hierarchies. I personally love hierarchies, but no one uses them.
They're great at an enterprise level. They're not great on a Jace.
I don't even know if they're great at enterprise level. Like the big thing is while they're great because they're dynamic navigation tree structure that updates based upon the components, rules, and relations that we have in a system. Getting someone to understand how to add the specific, those specific definitions, I'd rather fight a bear. So get rid of hierarchies and replace that with first off, I would replace it with subordinate schedules. But if we
Yeah,
had to do
agreed.
that, if we
Agreed.
had to do that
Yes.
with somewhere else, then let's go ahead and just show them how to edit slots, like hiding actions, because I guarantee you, very few people also do categories, roles, and users as well. Right. So I know very few people that actually configure categories properly. And so then I see everything that just is emergency overrides on everything because
Hmm.
they didn't configure them. So just show people how to hide the slots instead.
So it's funny you brought that up. During our class, I actually demonstrate during categories, users, and labs, and I present and demonstrate those 3 labs, as one big demonstration, because I think independently they're kind of meaningless. But
Yes.
as a group, I get to say, well, what if I want my engineer to have override, but not emergency override?
Mm-hmm.
And I show them how to leverage that with operator invoke versus admin invoke privileges on a particular category, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And then not every class, I'm guilty of not doing this every class, but I will show them the config facets where you can limit override durations on
Max
the
override
entire
duration.
station, right? So I haven't done that in probably 6 months. I should probably bring that in and just add it as like an appendix into the level 1, because I think that's pretty valuable. And the only way you have that permanent override is then if you have those admin invoke, right?
Yep.
So I think that's a good way to present that, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Counterpoint before Matthew asks his next question. I think they're garbage because people with invoke, you also get the set. And why would I want to set a fan option?
Yeah, that's
right.
fair.
So
That's
you should.
a fair point. Yeah.
Right. So like at that point, I need to teach them how to hide the set slot anyway, because I only want them to override and not set. What's the point of set there? Because you can't.
That's a fair point.
You
I
can't
think that
hide
makes a well-rounded lab right there. You just completed it. Thank you.
Yep. This is what I'm here. I drink and I know things.
Yeah, we work together. We make the industry better together.
We're all in this together.
And we sing
right.
Kumbaya.
Exactly. So happy together. Well, you guys obviously have feelings in this area, so let's zoom in on that. And what else would you change about the curriculum?
What I would probably do, instead of starting the students off with the clean JACE, is show them a constructed JACE with a number of different drivers. And that's the first thing, right? And I would go through the course adding different drivers like Modbus, backnet over IP segments, an MSTP segment, maybe another driver. I mean, you add one driver, you can add another one. It's just a drop-down list. But understanding the intricacies of that driver is what matters, right? Backnet polling. How does Modbus differ from backnet, and why does it matter? That's really why Niagara exists, right? To integrate data and the aggregation of data into something, whatever the thing is, supervisor, JACE, whatever. So when we understand why it exists and it's there to aggregate data, the AX wire sheet is just a feature on top of it, not the core idea of having global logic with a JACE controlling 11 air handlers in a wire sheet. And I think that is missing the mark in level 1, where we spend a significant amount of time in a wire sheet that it's good to know, but if you want to know programming, you really need to dive deeper into a particular line where KMC uses Connect, Distech uses ECGFX, Honeywell uses the IRM, even though it's much like an AX wire sheet. It's an embedded Niagara controller. It's important to know, but I don't know that I would spend so much time on it. And we've even seen this evolve over time, where we used to do lead lag with like a boiler hot water system, and then that got stripped back, and now we just do some T-stat logic and some loop point logic. And I think that's enough to introduce programming without stressing so much that all the logic should exist in the JACE, because really it's just a feature it can do. But do you want to rely on the Modbus network being up for your boiler to work? Or would you rather squirrel eat everything and the building still works? That's great. Like, that's awesome. Fewer points of failure, like we talked about earlier.
So to me that works. That part works. If you are, depending upon who is like that goes back to who is your audience, right?
It's
So
very true. Yeah.
so that part can work for you, and I don't. First off, I it's that one's a tough one. Yeah, we don't do as much logic as we used to, which overall is fine because the majority of the people out there program in GFX or IRM, or Control Basic, right? They have a local controller. Like for us, like that's why I have my Edge class specifically, and I break out logic a little more, and show them like compositing. I composite out folders and whatnot. So
That's where it's powerful.
well,
Yeah.
because we have to, right? We have to
Mm-hmm.
program in
Mm-hmm.
Niagara. What I personally would, another thing that I would move out of N4 TCP altogether are categories and roles. Um, I really would make that an intermediate thing, and here's why. Because I don't know how many people when you're first starting up as a Jace to make sure that you have these roles set up. Like, hey, okay, maybe you need someone that does a read only versus limiting whole parts of a station, right? Like it's that one's kind of tough. Like I would rather teach people one, graphics is really important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Teaching people PX properties and stuff like that. I would spend I would spend more time on some of that stuff. PX includes whatever, and then like level 2 for me would be like, okay, now let's really focus on categories, roles, and users. Let's make a read-only user. Let's make a user that can access the web browser but not Workbench. Let's go ahead and show them specifically why we do participation, because while we show people some of that stuff, it doesn't get touched anymore afterwards. So I'd rather bring in something like that and even more security from an intermediate side, because like, cool, I'm teaching someone how to set all this stuff up, but now they don't remember how to, um, you know, they don't remember how to make sure that their messages get through console recipient appropriately.
I
Um,
agree with you.
you know,
I agree with you.
in some of those cases, I would rather focus on. And now, for the record, I'm not knocking Tritium at all. I love Tritium, and I'm friends with the trainers, and I love them all dearly. It's hard when you come up with a class in general, and even a new class, right? What do you think is most important for people, right? Because we all have our different experiences and we have our different audiences. Um, like for example, the signing service.
I knew you were going there. I was just thinking that. I was like, I got rid of that and did it manually for all versions of N4,
Well,
instead of using the signing service.
well, no. As much as I hate IT people, no respectable IT person is going to really allow you to do that, right?
No, they're not.
They're not. So like I'd rather show them how to make certificates on your own, or receiving a third or receiving a certificate from someone else. As far as the different protocols, I think that is area based, right? Like I don't care enough to teach LAN anymore, and I almost don't care enough to teach about Modbus anymore.
Mhm.
And here's why. And honestly, I really don't even want to teach about BACnet, but I have to choose one of the protocols. LAN is regional based. Parts of the
And
South,
vertical based, yeah.
yeah, parts of the South, there still be some LAN out there, y'all. However, a lot of them are being switched to BACnet. More importantly, Modbus is one of those that is to me, so difficult to teach, right? Because yeah, we have an electric meter that's TCP, and yeah, we show you decimal. All right, cool. Well, what about understanding the differences between Modbus registers versus using hex versus using decimal? When is something zero base select? When is something big endian versus little endian? And then understanding each manufacturer does Modbus a little bit differently, and then each manufacturer does their own devices differently from one versus the other, right? That is so tough to teach, and you only have 4 days to train, right? So at that point, cut out even cut out compositing. I think compositing can be something for intermediate altogether.
Agreed. Or
you know,
in an edge class. It needs to be in an edge class, but
yeah,
agreed.
and I do. I teach it. I teach it in the edge class. But like, cut some of that out. Program service, that's tough. With great power comes great responsibility.
I like that one though. That was such a productivity enhancer.
Yeah, but you have so many people that don't do a backup prior to having it, right? So like, because they don't do a backup, they screw it up. I had a support call that said, "Hey, how do I do this?" Okay, literally in bold, italicize, and underline. My first sentence was, "Do a backup of your Jace beforehand, then go through XYZ." He immediately ignored number one and just went and made a mistake, and then got mad at me because I couldn't get him to go back to his mistake. Like, I couldn't get him to fix it. I was like, "Well, where's your backup?" I didn't have one. Well, if you try doing, if at first you don't succeed, try doing it the way I told you to the first time, right? XYZ. Um, it's a whole hot topic. It's tough. Like, I want to teach people that no matter what product you have, just look for it, right? Like, okay, the logic primarily is between kit control, okay, but there's also Vicon Pro and AX Community modules that most people get access to, especially shout out to Cochrane. They make it all there, and shout out to Niagara Mods because they have X Community, right? So now you can go to both of those places without being a Vicon rep and getting them and combining them. We can't really, from an N4 TCP, that's hard to teach. Supplementing that stuff. But even then, it's about understanding controls programming. So regardless of what product it is, as long as you understand I need an OR block and an AND block and a NOT block to do XYZ, okay, where do I go find? Right? This is just a different interface to do it.
Yeah. I think that while I agree with you that Modbus and LAN are dying. What I would like to add to the intermediate is the HTTP client driver. I did a YoLink integration with 1,700 devices out of New York City last year. And although we're not primarily a systems integrator, I do like to go in the field every now and again and solve problems because I don't want to be one of those trainers that's been training for 10 years and hasn't touched a new controller. And I got to learn a lot about the HTTP client driver last year and how YoLink did their specific integration. And holy moly, I was challenged for about a day and a half. And the customer that will hear this, I'll make sure he gets this podcast. He's going to laugh when he hears this because it was 1,700 devices. It was so many.
I don't know how I feel about that. I actually never used that client driver. And now primarily for me, and this is where the dev side comes in, like I just write a program object to write to the API and I just, and I just go out that way. Right.
I had 14 different calls though, because of how they structured the data. So it was how'd they do this one? How am I going to interpret their third party API call? Because it was not written by someone that spoke English.
Right. English is tough for people who speak English. It's even tougher.
It's true. So we have a saying with my friend Austin Norris. He's from North Carolina. We say that sometimes the PID stopped PIDing and sometimes the words stopped wording.
Yep. The PID
stopped working.
The PID indeed sometimes stop PIDing. Yep.
It's true. It stops sometimes. You're like, why'd the PID stop PIDing?
Yep.
If you could plug a cable into a new hire's brain and instantly upload one specific concept so you never have to explain it again, what concept are you choosing?
Backnet tuning.
Charles, same question.
Slow down and just focus on the basics. And for the record, Scott, there's an art to backnet tuning, right?
That's there is an art to it.
There really is. But for me, I need, pardon my French, I need those sumbitches to crawl before they can walk. And so for me, I want you to start focusing on the baby steps first, and the other stuff will come. Which is why you probably should have just a straight backnet class, right? Have a 3-day class of backnet. Okay. That, you know what? Here it is. We'll come up with a class together, and Link Spring and Rizzo can split it and make money.
How fun would that be? I'd love
oh,
doing that, Charles.
it'd
That'd
be
be a
great.
blast.
So have just a 3-day BACnet class. All right, cool. You understand integration. Let's talk about why we need tuning policies, why we want to disable right on up. Why do we want to disable right on start? Why do we want to set this one here? Why do we want to set with this? What's a guaranteed periodic refresh rate? Like why, why is that important?
Why? Who
right?
cares?
Yeah.
Just let it do his thing, right?
Well, there isn't one in BACnet, right? BACnet doesn't have a guaranteed periodic refresh rate like LAN does, right? That's why you need to have a policy to have like a min write time or a max write time, right? It's to make sure that, like, for example, Honeywell spiders, right?
They have to. Yeah, tuning's so important for the new Honeywell stuff.
Well, you have to, because again, they are notorious for, which, by the way, their optimizer stuff, chef's kiss. Spiders, they're a paperweight. I actually have 3 paperweights behind me on one of my.
I only have one, unfortunately, and he's a little guy. He's a 4024.
Oh no, oh hell no, mine are 6438s. But anyway, the fact is, like, when you write to an occupancy point, and you did not. Hey, look, I had unoccupied, but now my building says unoccupied again a minute later. Right? Those kinds of things are important, but that also can be specifically, product based as well. But like we have to fit the masses. But I think like a 3-day BACnet class would be great. Maybe even like a 3-day graphics class too. Right? So you could take some of that stuff and create a whole separate thing there for that. Modbus, how long you got to live?
Yeah, Modbus it's different per device, right? Like, it's not just, oh yeah, you have to know the register. Yeah, that's the beginning of the conversation.
Can't we just go back to pneumatics? Oil clogs it, water corrodes it. 15 years later, replace with DDC. Why not?
I don't mind Modbus for just monitoring. I have to say, we've done that with the Army National Guard projects, where you just pull in data from the same meter, because once you figure out one, the rest are easy. But figuring out one's a pain, and if that meter ever changes, it's like pulling your hair out again.
Yep, absolutely agree.
Great stuff. And rolling on, you have the power to ban one specific buzzword from the industry forever. Nobody is allowed to use it in a sales pitch or a training manual ever again. Which word goes in the bin? Mine is future-proofing, because I just don't think it's possible. Scott, you're up first.
Oh, yeah. I was hoping you'd call in Charles first. That's hard. What comes to mind is single pane of glass, because I think it's misleading. But it's definitely not one that, if I had, 20 minutes to think about this, I'd have a different one for sure. That and open both bother me. And kudos to you guys. I think open was the very first topic you guys talked about, maybe the first couple topics from its controls problem was, what does open mean? And you guys nailed it. Absolutely nailed the industry as a whole. So open and single pane of glass really kind of put a torque in my spine, and I'm like, this is bad.
And Charles, what would yours be?
Interoperability. I hate that word. I do.
Well, why is that? That's interesting. Tell me why.
Okay, so I was going to say AI, but we've done a lot of AI. I could go on a whole diatribe on why I'm not a fan of AI. However, interoperability is mine. Here's why. And especially BACnet, I'm looking in your direction, and they're probably gonna come to me at AHR like, oh yeah, huh? You don't like interoperability? Well, good luck getting swag from us. Do you need to take it home? Well, no, we don't want it. Take it. But we don't want to give it. Anyway, okay. Here's why interoperability, I hate the word. Okay. The whole thing is supposed to be building A talks to building B talks to building C. Okay. That is what, and that's exactly what BACnet boasts. Okay. BACnet boasts that, hey, you take these 30,000 devices and they're going to be one big happy family. Oh yeah. Well, why do I have to put them all in their own damn sandbox every single time? And what I mean by their own sandbox is like a BACnet router. Like, I can't get them all to talk together, right? I don't care about electrical. I mean, yes, you have to care about electrical load and stuff like that. And at that point, well, I don't know what all of you are supposed to be. Hell, you say you're supposed to be, 8th load device. Well, but I'm going to put 32 of you on here because I don't really know. And oh, I can't get you two to talk even though you're the same baud rate. Well, cool. What if I put you on a router? Hey, I'm talking just fine. It's like, hey, Mr. Backnet device, we don't take kindly to your types around here. Now, Skeeter, he ain't hurt nobody. No, I want to know something. Why is it that you are supposed to be able to be discoverable, but all I see are AIs and BIs? Why don't I see any descriptors from you? Like, I just no. Just like like no.
Yeah,
Actually,
hey, this was premeditated, is what this was.
Oh no. Oh no. For the record, everyone here, I know I know zero questions. Matthew normally gives me a list of questions, to ask and whatnot. I have none. And I didn't give him a list of questions. I was like, are you okay with me winging it? And he sends me the Shaquille O'Neal gif of him eating wings. So this entire episode was winging it. But no, interoperability is my word. I would want to just get rid of it. Because
can I be a devil's advocate for a second, Charles?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the examples I like to use as to why Niagara can be a great solution to a building is specifically for interoperability, where you might have an air handler that's BACnet and you have a chiller that's WAN. And the building owner wants to make it as efficiently as it can, where the sequence says, hey, we want to enable the chiller if there's a load and outside air is above 65, let's say. Well, if there's no load for cooling and it's 75, why is the chiller got to run? That's a scenario where I think interoperability specifically and the Niagara framework can be very, very powerful and even relatively inexpensive if that's the goal. Now, I hate that LAN and BACnet would be in the same building. That's like, I want to puke on that building. But that's a decent use case for interoperability, to use your hated word.
Yes, in the fact that, what Niagara brings, and to me, I think Niagara does this the best. Is bringing different, as they like to say, disparate systems together.
Mm-hmm.
That part I like, but BACnet is what boasted interoperability first, that I can take any BACnet device and those two will play nicely together. Whereas, LAN, oh, I need a dynamic device for this one. Oh, you don't have the XIF file? Get wrecked. Like that.
Yeah, I remember dealing with that for years. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but for me, it's really interoperability from a BACnet perspective. Like Tritium is great as
I see.
Yeah, Tritium is great from a from a translative perspective.
As an interpreter, absolutely.
Yes, 1000%. But BACnet boasts it, not a fan.
Yeah,
so that's
go yell at BLT. Go tell them, or BTL. BLT.
Now you got
BTL.
Now you got me hungry. Damn it, man. Well, that's okay. I got chicken and dumplings, so that's fine. I don't need the BLT today because chicken and dumplings. Yeah, they don't have that there.
BACnet lab testing.
Yep. Yeah. I can't wait to get myself BLT certified. You mean BTL? No, BLT certified.
That's right. With mayonnaise.
I said what I said. That's right. Yes. That's right.
It's got to be like a good thick white bread though, or multi-grain.
Oh, I'm glad my mom isn't listening. Nah, my mom needs sandwich bread. She will cut you if you give her thick white bread. Nope. At this point she's like a toddler. She's
Mrs.
like
Johnson. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
you have to be multi-grain.
Oh, I have to cut her sandwich diagonally. I can't just cut it in half. It's got to be diagonals, or else she won't eat it.
Who wants a half sandwich? Diagonal's the way it's got to be.
Hell no.
Well, I think sandwich cuts is a good place to cut it, and I'm out of questions, so all done. Thanks, guys.
Well, I tell you what, this has been a lot of fun. Oh my God.
This has been awesome. Thank you guys so much. This has been a blast.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. Scott, thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk about training and then even have this kind of quick session and kind of just play devil's advocate. So I really appreciate you being here.
Charles, I appreciate you, and Matthew, thank you so much thank you both for inviting me and having us here. It really was a privilege. It was a pleasure. And thank you guys for just being so graceful. I know that this wasn't planned. No one had any idea what questions were going to go on, and we just had a good conversation. And I think that I would love to do this again about any topic, whether it's BLTs or training.
Well, that's all we have for this episode. Remember to stay curious and that automation is better together. Until next time, I'm Charles.
And I'm Matthew.
And this has been It's a Controls Problem. All right, I'm going to wait for Matthew to acknowledge me before I say anything. I'm like...
You're important, Charles. We want to hear your side.
Oh,